Well, the South African Youth Economic Council says this year's budget must be focused on the youth. We're now joined by the spokesperson, Sthandiwe Msomi. Ms. Msomi, thank you for being with us. I guess it has to be focused on young people. They are the ones bearing the brunt of incredible unemployment in South Africa.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on Full View today. Indeed, it's quite important for this year's budget speech to be one that is revolutionary, because if not, we're just going to pass on a lot of the economic burdens that young people see today, well into next year and into the future. And I'm glad that you touched on the markets and commodity prices, because although South Africa's current account has experienced massive increases due to favorable commodity prices in the past quarters or so, it's quite unsustainable if you think about the fact that we still have an economy that is based on commodities. And so the National Treasury really needs to implement fiscal and monetary policy that is focused on ensuring that we build a strong economy by investing in people, investing in education, investing in infrastructure, so that we can actually stir up local industries to the point where businesses are created and are sustainable enough to actually export more materials to the global markets and increase our economy in that way.
But traditionally, the lion's share of the budget goes towards education, and we're not seeing the fruits of that. We're not seeing a culture that encourages innovation. South Africa is years behind in terms of even digital television, things like that. So how do you get young people to get skills in an environment when even our basic education is lacking despite the spend?
Indeed, that's a very good question. And it's quite concerning if you look at the budget cuts that several departments that are focused on young people have experienced in this past year or so. I mean, if you look at the 2020/2021 annual report of an organization like SEDA, they report that they had a 10% reduction in their budget. And that's an entity that is so key to developing young entrepreneurs who need access not only financing, but also the mentoring and the skills that, as you said, are needed to drive innovation forward. And so if the Minister of Finance is going to take after Minister Tito Mboweni in terms of a fiscal consolidation project that he announced last year to support the economic recovery and reconstruction plan, then we really find ourselves in a precarious situation where our budget is just focused on reducing debts and reducing interest payments and not really investing in organizations like the NYDA and SEDA and even universities to try to build up that skill set. I mean, indeed, there are priorities and trade-offs that we need to make. But ultimately, what's the point of trying to focus on fiscal consolidation only if you aren't developing a skilled human resource base? And that's the current situation that we find ourselves at this juncture.
All right, tell me about the specific concerns. I see that you're concerned about student debt that sits at about 14 billion rand. That's a mountain of debt. Are you hoping for some sort of write-off? What do you expect?
We are hoping for revolutionary action by a National Treasury. And often you'll find even the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Mr. Bredimandla, saying that the department is not in a position to write off student debt because National Treasury won't allocate that amount of money. But you have to find creative solutions to really find a way to scrap student debts. One way that National Treasury could look at doing is raising bonds, and that will obviously require them to consult with the Reserve Bank to widen the scope of the Reserve Bank to raise the funds that are needed to cancel student debt and to finance more students to get into the higher education system and build new universities. Because the excuse of constantly saying that we can't finance the higher education industry anymore is unacceptable in a country where you need a degree or diploma or some sort of qualification to even enter the gates of the private sector. And we all listened to the State of the Nation address. The President was very adamant about the fact that the private sector will be the ones to lead growth. But if capital is not spread out evenly and that capital is developing young people, then I think that we're going to continue seeing inequality, particularly wealth and income inequality in this country, widen, and it's going to affect young people the most.
It's often said, however, that many people are aspiring to go to university when it doesn't always work out. We know there are many unemployed graduates with degrees that aren't even valued as much in the market as technical skills or plumbing skills or artisanal skills. What can government do about that imbalance between what workers have, what the skills they have, and what employers actually want?
I think that's quite an interesting question because it makes us ask ourselves what the fundamental basis of our economy is based on. And a lot of economists talk about the fact that in as much as you want to say that technical skills are needed to drive our economy forward, South Africa is relatively a profit-led country instead of a wage-led or labor-led country. And so that's why you continuously see the continuation of those with capital and access to things like financing or even the ability to purchase real assets be the ones to accumulate more wealth in the country, while those who have to offer simply labor, which can be artisan or technical skills, often find themselves either starting businesses and not being able to sustain them because of funding issues, or not being able to compete well in the marketplace because of how monopolized certain industries in our country are. So we have to look at whether or not, if we tell students to go get technical skills, are we really going to create a space for them where labor-intensive growth is pushed forward? And at the moment, our manufacturing sector in this country is practically non-existent. So if you want to tell young people to go to TVET and get technical skills, do the work of stimulating manufacturing industries and other labor-intensive industries so that their skills actually have some sort of demand. And at the moment, graduate unemployment rates, particularly from universities or universities of technology, where you can get diplomas or other qualifications, those graduates experience way lower proportions of unemployment compared to those who simply are told to get artisan skills because of how we need innovation to drive our economy forward. And so I would say to that response that if we want to tell young people to go and get technical skills, then we must invest in local businesses and in the manufacturing industry and other labor-intensive industries so that young people who actually have those qualifications have the space to work.
All right, looking out for young people. And of course, we'll bring you the budget speech and all the previews and the post-interviews live on this channel. That was spokesperson for the South African Youth Economic Council, Sthandiwe Msomi.